I'm really happy that we are talking. And it was interesting because obviously after we sort of agreed that we'd have the conversation, a few of the communities and WhatsApp groups that I'm a part of suddenly started talking a lot about this. And it's funny because obviously we know that AI is very much like on the zeitgeist and it's something that people are very interested in.
Absolutely.
But I feel that's been the case for quite a long time. At least for me, I've been thinking about it, talking with people about it for quite a long time. But it feels, at least, in the spaces I'm in, that there's a real bubbling of it at the moment and a real sense of somewhere between confusion and fear. So it felt timely to have the conversation.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's also, depending on your context, like electronic music, AI tools have been leveraged for quite some time. I don't think it's a new conversation, but like I have, friends who are adjacent and like indie rock labels or whatever, and it's become more of a conversation for them over the past couple of years, recent years, I should say, where, I don't know, electronic music creators in particular are, as my colleague Kurosh says, who's one of the co-founders of the Association for Electronic Music. He says electronic music creators are the canary in the coal mine. And it's true when it comes to new technologies. But also I think there was this kind of moment where AI or music gen AI, which ultimately is what we're talking about here, as opposed to assistive AI, which are like studio tools. Like you use those tools, for EQing your broadcast and probably have for years. I have used Isotope and Lander and all sorts of stuff for years as well. But it's the music gen AI output, I think, that everybody's like, okay, wow.
Yeah. So we have sort of kind of just got straight into it, but I do think it's your background. We obviously spoke before we did the podcast and I got to have a bit of insight into your background, but I think it's so interesting because it is so far reaching. And I think it gives you quite a unique perspective on AI itself and the generation of new technologies. But I feel like we could just start almost at the beginning of your entry into the music industry, and then we'll follow the path a little bit.
Okay, so Lex, full disclosure here. I often tailor my entry into the music industry for sometimes who I'm talking to. And it's only in recent years that I've actually felt comfortable about sort of talking about the whole thing because so you'll get the full trip. And also, I think because I came in as a music creator, I guess that's what we call it now. I mean, essentially, I went to high school in the States. I left. I went to London. I was in London in the 90s. I was very fortunate to get signed to a publishing deal to a company which was then called Momentum Music, which was part of Beggar's Banquet. So I kind of came in through that school, as it were. I'm absolutely indie label purist, but at the same time, I was very affected by London culture. I heard electronic music. I also had a girlfriend who was American who got shucked out of England, and I have an Irish family. So I was just like, let's go to Ireland, which is easy for me because that's the home country. And in Ireland, I got involved in pirate radio. And from there, essentially spinning electronic music. In terms of my songwriting career in Momentum Music, they were very patient with me. I did not continue on that track. They did publish sort of the first electronic music stuff I released, which included remixes by like Carl Craig. But that all came as a combination of my experience in London, being distracted by raves and clubs and everything, and then going to Ireland, which had a pretty nascent scene at the time. From pirate radio, I went on to the national station. I worked at RT2FM, sort of playing late Sunday night show, which would be anything from at the time from Interpol to Ricardo Villalobos, could play anything. I also was working for a company called Vital, which essentially was PS, Played Against Sam. And we set up an Irish office, which was actually located in the same building that U2's management company was. So it was all very lucky and fortunate and all these great people around. But at the time, Ireland was really, for a small country, because this was buying a lot of CDs. Like downloads were just beginning. And I mean, it was unbelievable to think back that in Ireland, we were doing 7 million a year in CD sales. Is pretty significant.
I feel that energy when I'm around like Irish DJs or artists who are sort of like very integrated into the Irish music scene. there's a real passion and like a very active, compounded following of them, I feel.
It's a huge music. I can't even, it's such a huge part of the culture. And also, you know, Irish people, at least when I was there, they're very social. So you go into town, particularly in Dublin on Saturday. So you would go to Tower Records, you would go to all the Abbey Discs, you would go to these record shops and you would buy and converse and learn. And so, you know, that was also part of the culture. The other thing that happened is that PS at the time, although they did what was pure distribution in the UK, Ireland, I had a unique opportunity because I had labels like Beggars, Ninja Tune, Warp, Mute, etc. say, look, we need you to sort of represent us a little bit more in Ireland. We want you to do our marketing. We want you to take care of our artists. So essentially that's where, you know, I started learning about major festivals and, you know, working with artists like Moby and The Strokes and all this kind of stuff. Funnily enough, I always had this passion for electronic music. And one of the labels I was working with was Domino Records. There is a gentleman called Harry Martin, who's one of the founders of Domino Records, if I could say that. Of course, Lawrence Bell and Jackie. But Harry lived in Ireland and he was really interested in what I was doing with the labels there. So he said to me, would you be interested in going to Germany? And he knew that I was an absolute electronic music nerd. And I thank Harry for that because of so basically I got the chance to go to Germany and set up the Domino Records German office. And we were dealing with Animal Collective and Arctic Monkeys and Franz Ferdinand and all this kind of caper.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful. And that ran for a couple of years. But I was also getting deeper and deeper into the scene in Berlin. So there is a record shop that still exists called Hardwax. And Hardwax is owned and run by a gentleman called Mark Anestis, who is absolute foundation in the Berlin and electronic music scene globally. He was part of a project called Basic Channel, also Rhythm and Sound. And Mark at the time had people working in the shop who were about to become super famous. That included like Marcel Detman. And the idea was, can we build some sort of download shop for, are you sure you want all this? Because it's
I know it's a lot, but I do think it's important because it feeds so much of what you're doing now. And it's the context that you bring to your perspectives on it.
I had left Domino all on, you know, just, I'm going to disappear into this electronic music world I love. And
it sucks you in.
It sucks you in. The
underground electronic scene.
Definitely. And, you know, so Hardwax was just like my center of gravity. In fact, I'd been buying from the shop since I lived in Ireland. Long story short, Mark asked me, said, hey, would you like to come in and do some digital stuff for us? So I was involved in like setting up supplier contracts so we could have, you know, downloads from companies like EPM, who are an excellent distributor for techno house, underground music, Essential Account, things like that, but also in reverse, you know, creating a digital distribution for artists who were working in the shop, because we were all, and probably still are, really loyal to Hardwax. So we felt safe.
Yeah.
And that also started a lot of other fun and games because, you know, working in the record shop, you know, you can see the relevance of vinyl. And also I always liked the idea of having this sort of day job, which is somewhat rooted. I don't know if this has to do with my upbringing or whatever, but having this creative side as well. And Hardwax was like, wow, I can release records under pseudonyms and we can put them through the shop and, you know, and hey,
you can sit back and be like, that one's fine.
Yeah. But also at the time, like we were super anti-social media. Like none of us were feeling. But that's also part of the resistance because sometimes you're, you know, so it was home to a lot of Berlin talent that were inspired by Basic Channel and the vibes that Mark was throwing down. And in that community, there were people like Robert Henke from Mono Lake, and Gerhard Bellis was an original member of Mono Lake, and him and Robert founded Ableton. And also there artists like Eric Aerosmith, who was also creating really cool instruments for Native Instruments. And I met Mata Galic at the time, who was like, God, I can't remember. Mata was president of NI or something like that, who had been a DJ in Cologne. And I literally would see at, you know, birthday parties for people who were in the hard wax community. And that kind of sucked me into music tech. So that really became sort of where I was like making the connections, because I think music, I'm always been interested in holistically in terms of how does it all work?
Yeah. And the music tech part, do you think it was the development of sounds that was kind of fascinating for you, or was it the business side? Because that's also quite interesting. I remember, I think it was at IMS, I heard that Ninja Tune had made more from a piece of hardware that they'd released than their previous 3 albums that they'd released. So it's also an interesting, like, the business side of how you can support the creative side. It's like both things are what I find interesting. I wonder what it was that drew you.
No, absolutely. I think that's really insightful. At the end of the day, electronic music, a lot of it is about textural composition. So artistically, any sort of creating sounds in the creation process, especially when you go to that level of like somebody like Robert Henke or Aerosmith, they are really designing all their sounds from the core. And then that's really creatively exciting. That's kind of like, wow, this is ground up. And so there is that side of it. But then there's this other side of it where you see that these artists they're not forsaking their ideals in any way, shape, or form. And they just have another income stream so that they can do what they want. And, it was funny too. There was a friend and the buyer at Hardwax at the time, who's also a artist. He went under the pseudonym T++, but Torsten Prufrock is his name. And Torsten also always used to say, like, some of the most interesting records I would get sent, for consideration to carry in the shop were people who actually had music and some sort of job, because there was no pollution in between. It was really, so this is the Hardwax purity. There's a very unique culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of took you into music tech. And then from there to, I guess, where you are today and working with AFEM, what was that transition? Artistic careers, there's like always so many things that feed the journey.
Oh yeah, like yourself. I mean, you're creating, and you do, know, exactly. So I definitely got interested in sound design, and I saw the opportunity for samples, very interesting samples that could be, and also I noticed that artists around me had sort of declining revenue, particularly people who were producers who were not necessarily DJ. And so that became interesting because, I'd also worked in distribution. I'd done A&R. So I was like, okay, how can I help this really creative group of people to, share their sound signatures in a way they feel comfortable and also provide them an extra income? I founded a company with the 2 of the Beatport founders, one of which is a gentleman called Eloy Lopez. And the idea is that we would create these sounds that were special, also that there was this kind of ready-made aspect to it, that they would be very interchangeable, so that, it would be, you didn't necessarily need musical semantics to create music from these kits. Then it was like Native Instruments were like, hey, can you do these for Machina or Contact Play? We did some stuff for Roland. And then, I think that, so that was going on. We also did stuff with Ninja Jam, which is Matt Black's Ninja Tune. There's all this kind of stuff. And I also had a musical project at the time with Magda, the DJ. And so that was called Blotter Tracks. And we had done these sort of, gigs in Fabric. We'd done a Japan tour. So we were really free when we were doing that project, because we just kind of wanted to do what we felt was at our essence, or what we were really interested in musically. And then we had big plans, and then COVID hit. So COVID hit, and it was kind of like, okay. So at that point I got involved with Lander. I was quite familiar with the Lander product also. So this AI was already in the waters, and then creating these vast libraries that I'd done for years, which require metadata and a lot of it. I was like, my God, there has to be a solution rather than doing this manually. So then through my discoveries, I found a great German company called Cyanite, which, does a lot more than metadata tagging, but it was really profound. It would describe sounds in natural language, so a producer could make a journey without having musical semantics. They could say like, dusty road, sunset, or it was really fascinating. And, and this really sort of sucked me in. So basically at this point, I eventually worked for Cyanide, but I think what happened there was this coming together of two things. One, I understood the creator side of it. I understood the business side of it, and also what kind of contracts needed to be done with artists for these certain types of libraries where you're letting other people use it to create further musical compositions. And really, at Lander, I started leveraging music gen AI teams to create royalty-free sounds. Yeah. It's not like what we see now with Suno and Udio, but that's where it all came together. And because we had to make so much content, it was like, it has to be royalty-free. And also when you're dealing with some artists, like particularly in Germany, if you're based in Germany and you're signed to Gamma, I can't necessarily come to you and say, hey, can you give me a bunch of royalty-free sounds? Yeah. Because enshrined in the law in Germany is that a musical phrase has a copyright which is not assignable. That's kind of paraphrasing the law. That's also something you have to kind of bear in mind, like when you're doing these sounds, like Epidemic Sounds, who do, like when they started, would only work with artists in certain territories where their PROs or the CMOs would limit them from doing that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So all this is swimming around in the background.
So even a simple thing, but like a sample pack created by an artist that still essentially has their ownership, like kind of?
It's a super gray area. And that's why when you do these contracts, so this is kind of boring part, but actually so important in all of this and how this weaves into AI principles and understanding, creative usage, is that, it varies by territory. There has classically been a sort of gray area around sample packs. Like, also, I know artists who publishers would not want an artist to create a melodic sample pack that anyone could use. Is giving away their IP ultimately. But, some publishers just turned a blind eye to it because they thought, okay, this is going to pay that artist rent this month. So
yeah. And actually, I find that as a DJ or producer, my relationship with an artist often deepens by experimenting with the sounds that they've created and working with their sound pack. So it actually kind of has changes the relationship that you have with the artist, I think, and kind of gives it depth. So there is also like a genuine positive playoff that it has on the relationship you have with an artist's music, I find.
100%. And also, I use them too when I'm mixing, not necessarily as part of the output, but I start throwing sounds together too, to also just get a mix because I know I'm hearing that sound, I'm hearing that signature. And then I'm sort of like, it's kind of like the way you described it. I see that as collaborating. Simple Packs gave people a chance to collaborate with other artists in a way.
Yeah. And then, so is it 2 years you've been at AFEM?
Yes, exactly. The connection with AFEM happened through Ben Turner. He and I had a dialogue when I was at Lander. And also I had done some stuff with Rich before, Rich Houghton. He had this amazing mixer that we used we used to do trade shows when I was doing the company was called Erupt that I had with Beatport founders. And, we would do like trade shows like NAMM or Super Booth in Berlin, and Rich had given us one of this mixer that he had done with Alan and Heath, which had all this amazing EQ and, sort of also pointing towards samples as part of the live expression as well. But anyway, I knew Ben through that. And then I think Ben and I were talking and AI had come up, and it was for an IMS. He wanted to put an AI panel together, like one of the original ones. And I was at Cyanide at the time, and he said, would you like to join? And I was like, yeah, sure. So, that sort of brought me closer into the AFEM world, or AFEM. And, that was really wonderful for me because the association looks at the electronic music as an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And for me, that really clicks because I see the publishing side. I come from rights management and creator tools. I'm not coming from live, although I perform live, but I get the system and how it interconnects. And that's pretty, so for me, that was a rare chance. And I've always been idealistically led in what I choose to do. I have always made a conscious decision to work for companies I believe in. It's, finance is part of it, in survival of life, but it's not what drives me. It's actually, yeah.
Yeah. And so AFEM, so I had been aware of AFEM for a few years because it's just one of those things, you see the name, it crops up, you're like, okay, cool, that seems like a legitimate, important thing. And one of the things that I remember sort of like really liking about IMS was this idea that it was like looking at the electronic music industry and trying to address some of the problems with like a maturity almost of like, let's come together and let's make this thing that we love, but we know it has its problems. Let's see how we can kind of work through them together. I always felt like that was something really positive. And I think that having these spaces and these bodies and these groups like AFEM offers a sense of security in a way to quite a chaotic space to be in. And I think that like there's other spaces that I find like I have, as I said, like there's quite a few communities that I'm a part of, like groups and things that offer that. But AFEM is almost like, as I find, it's like almost like a slightly sort of, it's almost just like a kind of parent group for the world. How do you see it?
AFEM is a trade association at the end of the day. So we've got 300 member companies. So a member for us is a company, and that can comprise from small to large companies. That is in over 40 countries globally. Our strongest footing is UK, EU, US, and then, sort of rest of the world, as it were. The membership can be any of the businesses along the way of what would make up the electronic music ecosystem. So you could have agencies, you could have DSPs or like Beatport, companies like Alpha Theta, Pioneer, DJ, collection societies like PRS, ASEM, GEMA, managers, finance, lawyers, music tech companies, also music creation tool companies, which is more what I see as traditional music tech. Sound system is like L-Acoustics. So labels, publishers, you name it. So yes, it does give you a unique view, and the members are coalescing around electronic music, things that are also unique to electronic music. Like we start to talk about AI, for instance. It's not, definitely a conversation to have very early on in electronic music in terms of music gen AI outputs.
Yeah.
That's the association, as it were. And we look at themes, problems, and lobbying, and, all these things that affect our culture, and also creating dialogues cross-sector as well. Yeah. This is super important.
And so something like the AI principles, is there sort of an end goal that you get buy-in from all the companies that are a part of AFEM?
Exactly. So that came about as a member initiative. We have a member called Paradise, which is a distribution company, and a whole lot of other stuff.
Not Jamie Jones Paradise, different
Paradise.
No,
different Paradise. But, Paradise is based in Germany, in South Africa, and also in the US. I also think they have a Mexico office. And Ralph Berger, who is the CEO of Paradise, came, because he's on the front line of it, and he's like, I'm seeing this. And it's like, oh yeah, I know. It's like game on. Absolutely. Yeah. And also the fact is, like, you and I are sitting here talking about sample packs and royalty free. I mean, think about our culture. If we were in a rock band, we would not necessarily be talking about this.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And even collaboration actually is like, we talk about sample packs as being a form of collaboration, but the collaboration between electronic artists is, you don't necessarily form a band and stick with it. I mean, everyone's sharing ideas all the time. Everyone's sharing sounds all the time. There's this very much like collective energy between people and between creators, I think.
Exactly. So there is that, as you said, this natural point of collaboration. So, and which also in terms of music Gen AI outputs, could we train on your sound signature and then you give it to me and then I'm work with it, come back to you. And then all of a sudden we're attributing our writing to, of course that's the future. It's a no-brainer. But yeah, Ralph came forward with it. This really caught other members' attention, including Ben and Kurosh Nasseri, one of our co-founders, comes from legal background. We also had lawyers who were weighing in on the 4 core principles. And we thought to ourselves, okay, we're a global organization. We are domiciled in the US. Actually, AFEM is a US nonprofit, although we, operate globally. So we said, and that was kind of in my brain. I was speaking to Kurosh about it. It's like, can we look at it from an EU perspective and reflect that back to the rest of the world? Because if we look at music Gen AI in the view of the US right now, is that healthy? I mean, it's just like, ugh. And also came up the discussion that, well, actually judges in the US read white papers. They reference trade organizations. So the idea is, let's get this into the water. Let's look at it from an EU perspective. Let's have our EU members weigh in on it. Let's get the alignment of CMOs like SACEM. And also let's start pushing this out as an ongoing theme that we can continue to build on.
Yeah.
So that's really what's happened. We first announced the principles at a private event in Barcelona at BMAT offices, which was members only. Then we were invited by Andrea at Sonar D to come in and speak publicly about it at the beginning of the summer, which was great because also, that particular part of the program, Sonar Plus D, was focused on AI, and DeepMind was there, and Suno and Ableton. And we were like, okay, we need to be in this conversation.
Yeah.
So that's really where we distilled the 4 core principles, which I can give them to you if you want.
Yeah, I think let's start with the 4 core principles, and then I've got kind of my questions and then questions that people shared before that they're particularly interested in, which I think will sit underneath those principles.
Perfect. So the 4 core principles in essence are consent, moral rights, old contracts don't apply, and credit and pay. So what that means is the original document was quite depthy and obviously coming from a legal perspective, but consent means that essentially the creators should consent to this, or not should, but they have the right to consent. Old contracts don't apply was us also sharing with our membership. It's like music Gen AI is not a new format. It's not streaming. It's not downloads. These old contracts were never built for this. So let's not say they are. And, let's have a fresh dialogue about this. Moral rights is something that is not enshrined in law globally, but it is enshrined in key EU member states, including Germany. And moral rights is simply that you will not use my music to do something which would morally offend me, to paraphrase. So, yeah, like in Germany, I would be morally offended if my music was used for a political party I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
So we put that out there. And then credit and pay, which is that on the attribution, training data sets side, and also on the music Gen AI output of what will happen from those training data sets, that the artists are credited and paid. Because ultimately, across our ecosystem, we could see that if the creator class, if I could say that, is impoverished, the ecosystem will collapse.
Yeah. And one of the things I was wondering that how you thought about it when you're approaching it is, how do you get the balance right between being optimistic and value centric and knowing that there's something here to protect, and also being realistic and knowing what we're up against and the speed that AI moves, and trying to get buy-in and adoption and all those sorts of things at the pace that AI is just taking. I don't know if that's quite right.
No,
the pace that things are developed and taking the sounds already.
Absolutely. And this is the reality of it. We know it's been scraped. I mean, as recently, we've been iterating these principles at a few conferences over the past few weeks. We did a Music Frontiers in Berlin, which was fantastic. Paris Electronic Week. Kurosh was over for both of those. And then at Reeperbahn Festival. And when you're in proximity to not only the membership, but just the reality of what's going on, we know things are moving fast. And also we didn't want to release something that was just like, hey, these are our ethics. It's just kind of like, we wanted business solution. It's like, and also what we got from our membership was that certain members want a license. They want a license for training. And why not? Also, in terms of electronic music, we're like, some pretty cool tools here if people can get paid properly.
Yeah.
So also we wanted to facilitate business solutions as well. Mm-hmm. And also, in terms of what has been scraped already, we're aware of that. So the AI principles were never meant to sort of us sitting on these lofty ideals and saying like, hey, these are our ethics. It's like, yeah, these are our ethics, but also these are solutions driven as well. It's like, and it's because of the electronic music, and also us as an association, we're for these tools being used. We just want people paid. And in case that can include retroactive, what have some of our members done? It's like Gamma, for instance, they sued Suno. These lawsuits are in the water already. So our members are already at it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we're also wanting to see retroactive compensation, as well as allowing licensing of legitimate licensing with attribution. Because also when you look into the, music gen AI platforms, when you say metadata to a tech company, it's like we say metadata all the time in music, but we're thinking of music metadata. Metadata is something different depending on what your context is. So to also explain to these platforms like, hey, we have a music metadata standard, which is called DDEX, and we're also a member. And, this is all, it's great you built your tools, you ignored the music industry doing it because you wanted to build things, run fast and, blow minds here, but shit's got to change.
Yeah. And I think that question of consent is a very difficult and interesting one. And it's like on a simple level, is there any way as an artist, I guess, of knowing if your music or your output has been used to influence AI or has been kind of taken? And how does that work in terms of like tagging and the sovereignty of that data and protecting it?
Exactly. I mean, I think the most interesting, so far, an interesting business case has been with 11 Labs in New York. I think they do voice cloning and a few other things. They did a deal with Merlin, which is a sort of independent trade body, without going too deep into it, that represented the recorded rights for a lot of labels. And this was interesting for me because this is, a company saying, hey, okay, we want to interact with the music industry on, within your terms, maybe not on them, but within them. So they're realizing that, you've also got to remember too, and it's not often talked about, which is that AI needs more to continue to be, so, this is not just they train on all this stuff. And
yes, it's ready to go. Like it's going to be a constant evolving thing that needs a solution for now, but it needs a solution for its future development, which is also so much a part of this work. It's like, how do we shape the future of what AI tools can do and do and are built on?
Exactly. So that's part of it. And it also gives us the knowledge that feeding the machine works well for both sides. So that's good for new content. In terms of what's been put in there, I mean, by God, musicologists, all sorts of data, scientists have looked at these models and are just like, it's like, it was interesting recently, like Suno's, there's I think, lawsuit against Suno, which is like also details it like, hey, you scraped YouTube. And it's like, so that's really, so I think really what we're at in terms of like attribution of what's in there already, we can pretty much assume that it was things like YouTube, Spotify. So that's a lot of music. And then like going forward, it's like, hey, attribution, we need this to work. So you need to keep training your shit. We need to be paid for our shit. So let's figure this out. Let's work together. And you need to learn what a publisher is. You need to learn how that all interacts with recorded. And ultimately, too, I think it's really smart if these platforms are positioning themselves as creator tools. Like, why would you want to rip off creators to then offer them a tool? That would just be, because vibe is everything as well.
Mm-hmm. And people are like, you're not in music creation for the money, like you're in it for the love, like you care. People care a lot. So they want to understand the ethics and the foundations of what they're working with.
Totally. And also you have organizations like DDEX, which is the metadata, music metadata standard. So worth Googling, not going to explain it for, sake of time, but we're a liaison organization with DDEX. And, they sort of define the standards in terms of, the music metadata that goes along with deliveries. And they've also have defining an AI standard in terms of, also like, how much AI has been used in a track? Is it all AI? So, all these industries, are all these organizations are at play here working it out. Does tech move faster than the music industry? Yes. Does the music industry know how to sue tech companies? Absolutely. And also when you start bringing in this, what I would say, because you had asked me once too, about like, how can an artist protect themselves?
Yeah.
And this is really funny, but like I'm in Germany for years. I've been making music and I was not registered with a rights organization because I was in my little, even though I knew about the music industry, I was in my little underground world and whatever. And when I professionally saw AI coming in terms of where it was going to go, I immediately registered with GEMA. I was like, hi, GEMA. I want to be a member. And, and also because, there's value in being a member of GEMA besides, understanding where the royalties are is a huge thing. But also for me, it was important to like, whose club can I get into that'll somewhat protect me? And GEMA and SACEM, obviously they opted their members out, which creates a legal precedence, even though the training had been done, but at least it's some sort of protection.
Yeah.
Plus, I also realized I was an idiot for not being a member of a collection society as well.
I mean, I'm an idiot in the same way. It's been on my to-do list for like 3 years or whatever since I've been releasing music. I'm like, I really need to sort out that.
Oh, exactly. It's so funny too. We're Paris Electronic Week, K7 were involved in this panel I was doing, and also Cassian, the duo, were signed to K7. And it was great, like just talking with them because they were like, we did our underground stuff and we did all this. And then we got this offer for a sync. And then we realized, we need help here. And, they get publishing and they get, I think they were registered with PRS already, but, it becomes this kind of thing where, it's definitely worthwhile to register, particularly in Europe and the UK, where these collection societies are also given a state mandate, and there is there's an education piece as well.
Yeah. I think that's a really good, like, simple kind of key takeaway for any creator or artist is like, don't expect that you as an individual can necessarily be the best way for you to sort of protect is to actually be a part of a group that is working directly at the kind of forefront of putting these rights protections in place, and you sit underneath them in terms of
percent. And also, like, in a way, there's this kind of singular vision of the artist in electronic music as one person or one DJ but also we've been kind of sold a bill of goods from North American tech companies that have kind of said, you'll be an artist. Here are these tools, you. And at the end of the day, it's like, it takes a village to create music. It takes a village to do the business of music.
Yeah.
And that's why associations like ourselves exist.
Yeah. So one of the questions that a lot of people have, and it's something that I've seen as soon as it gets announced, Deezer shares their findings or someone shares their findings, it spreads like wildfire, is the volume of fully AI generated music that is now on streaming platforms. And what I'm wondering is, and I know we don't have all the answers, but like from what you've witnessed or conversations you've heard, are there measures ongoing to, for example, divide the fee between, like, does a robot deserve as much money as a human, or what happens in that sense? Because it's obviously going to impact your streams, but I think the payback is probably the more concern.
Okay, so good question. So I guess a week or two ago when we were in Paris for Paris Electronic Week, we sat down with Deezer. as well, because so it's really great timing you asking me this, because they've reported like 20%, and I think they said it's now up to like 28 or 30%. Yeah. It's really quite considerable.
And I think that's been in less than 6 months, that change, something like that. Really recent.
My God. But also it's crazy, because I can remember doing panels like 2 years ago when like, or more, even before joining AFEM, and just basically, I think we were talking about X amount of tracks, like 10,000, 15,000 tracks per week, and saying, look, it's going to go up to like 250,000 or more. And it's like, it happens so quick. Yeah. But there was an interesting article about Spotify as well. I saw it last night, where Spotify are also identifying the content. But your question about like remuneration and how it's split. So AI music is also very handy for streaming fraud, because you can create a lot of catalog, and you can create bots to juice that catalog. Yeah. And then you've got bad actors also leveraging this music for unfortunate too, because, I like the idea of somebody being able to sit down and prompt something and create some music and feel, so that's one thing. Another point that I just should mention is that any of these services that you're using as a creative, read the terms and conditions page, because very often there's hidden language in there where they still own the copyright, or this is the music gen AI companies, really important. Right. So definitely do that, because that's super important. But going back to the Deezer and Spotify thing and how it affects independent music. Now, in the article I read regarding Spotify last night, and also what was said at the Deezer meeting in Paris, is that a lot of this content, aside from the fraud aspects of it, is nobody's really listening to it. So it's interesting. There's a lot of spam. Yeah. So, you have essentially, and that's been
it's the path. Like junk email in your inbox kind of thing. It doesn't actually get read. Interesting.
It doesn't get read. So now they're thinking, is this a value? Do we just remove it? And also, we're kind of guilty of this in this sort of creator tool space as well, because we've been trying to democratize music, and, saying like there should be a lower barrier for entry. And man, we've really got the barrier for entry low now. It's like, you can,
do you have a phone?
It's like, yay. But now it's kind of like, okay, is it meaningful? Does it kind of like, and I don't want to stand in the way of anyone's dreams to create music. And also remember, aspirational music making is so much part of how music instruments companies make money, whether you're talking about a native instruments or Fender guitars. Yeah. And, so that's there, but, this can also end up on Spotify. And so that's what you're seeing. So in terms of dilution, is it diluting independent artists' cuts? Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, the companies say, no, officially nobody's reading it, but it is, of course, because with independent music, you're talking about smaller cohorts of people.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a given. And plus the fact in electronic music, we have this default where we think we release a bunch of stuff and we just make money from gigs, which is wrong.
Yes. Yes. Very true. I think that's a perception that most of we're like, okay, I want to make my songs so that someone will book me to play.
Totally. And that was it. And like Cassian was doing the same thing.
Financially, obviously you make it for the love, but like as in the payoff, you're not expecting the payoff to come from your releases.
Totally niche market, downloads and streaming is not, huge income unless you get a massive. So I get it, but still it's worth understanding your rights and also understanding what a collection society is or these things. By the way, there's a really good resource which is paid for by the UN called CLIP, Creators Learn Intellectual Property. The website is goclip.org. It's in 7 different languages, and it is an initiative of WIPO for creators. This is a fantastic resource to learn about rights, management, royalties. It's a very global picture of it, but it's essential because years ago, you would have had to have such proximity to business people to understand it. And now this is available. So just thought I'd share that.
This is great. Thank you. So I guess the two kind of final questions that are mulling over in my brain is, actually, firstly, someone that I was speaking to was wondering about the A&R and label perspective on AI generated music. And I think it's such a personal thing, I would say. Like, there's probably not going to be a kind of one way that people look at it. But what are you hearing and what are you feeling from more A&Rs and signing music side?
Exactly. So we have a member, Albert Gruber, who runs a label called Revert Records. And a few weeks ago in Berlin, there was a panel discussion around Label 3.0. And Albert summed up something beautifully. So just to take a step back.
Yeah.
The A&R tools like Cyanite that I mentioned earlier can also be used for similarity searches. So labels get a lot of demos.
Yeah.
And there is the idea that from an A&R perspective, you could take a track that if you were a DJ, let's say, and you really knew that this worked, you could say, take that track or the part of it that you liked, take a segment of it, run a similarity search across the thousands of demos you've received, and uncover, hopefully, some gems. So there's that thought. Somebody like Albert also says, I don't want to do that as A&R. I want to just really, plug into what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, who I'm connecting with community-wise, and also what I know works as a dance floor. However, he's also stated, with my artists, I also want them to, using the AI principles like consent, right, opt in for training on their catalogs and our catalogs that we hold and my music, so we can have a creative output that is in our vibe that we can also leverage Music Gen AI. So he's also looking at A&R in this super high level kind of way. It's like, one, I like the traditional way of finding people.
Yeah.
Two, how about Music Gen AI outputs and also as a creative wellspring for my community?
Yeah.
And also, what could that look like in gaming?
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Gaming as well, which again, it's like, it feels like a leap from most creators to think about that world. Maybe this is one way to start to bridge the connection to that world, maybe as a label. Very interesting.
Exactly. But also in terms of like, for me, it's like we look at music as like it starts here and it finishes there, and that's the track. And for me, I think culturally we were moving away from that anyway, with like drone music in the 60s with Lamont Young. And, also like the first time I heard Ricardo Villalobos, his music, I was like, this is just like a snapshot in time of a moment that he's recorded of a jam that probably went on for an hour or 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I think in electronic music, we've kind of been pointing towards this open, endless kind of thing anyway. And certainly the party scene in Berlin over years has always pointed to that too. It's like party ohne Ende. But I think that when it comes to music and gaming and the way music can also be consumed, particularly adaptive, that we need to look at music as something that can also be regenerated with its core IP, and it can have these variations that are useful in, like, say, a gaming situation, or if you're using music for meditative practice. So this is also something that's very much discussed in our community, is like, a track's not just a track, is it? And a vibe is much bigger than that. IP surrounds a whole artist. Like, we have a member, Andrew Melchior, who worked with Massive Attack on, I think it was the Fathom app. And that took Massive Attack's Mezzanine record and offered neural or AI remixes, depending on, input from the user via their Apple Watch or what have you, that would create these, or time of day, like you would get a version of Teardrop in the morning that would sound different to the, and that was,
I would love to wake up to Teardrop.
Totally. And that was 2000. It's one of the most beautiful. And also, God bless Liz Fraser and her voice. But like that's our culture. So also considering spatial audio and, how immersive audio sounds in the, so these are good problems to have. These are electronic music problems.
Yeah.
And this is all, so this feeds into A&R, this feeds into our culture, this feeds into experience, and this also feeds into how we need to think about IP, not just as this stereo thing, but like also, how does it keep going? How does Teardrop keep going?
Yeah.
And how does that ownership still maintain with Massive Attack?
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to ask, just as a sort of summary question, is what's next for the AI principles that you're developing? What are the next steps?
Sure. So we will be messaging them at ADE within our annual general meeting. And also we continue to incorporate them. We're doing panel programming during that time, which will also take in the AI principles. So this is something that we keep iterating and also keep sort of aligning members along the way and also getting their feedback. But also, I think the thing that's really struck me as well is that, like at Reaperbond last week, it was interesting to speak with a lawyer member of ours who is dealing with certain massive catalog holders. And they look at the AI principles and they also sometimes don't feel that consent should matter. So it's really interesting to get that, because it's like, why should consent not matter? And some of these bigger catalog holders are saying, well, we actually have contracts that had a production music clause in it. So there was an assignment of moral rights. Production music works differently to like record labels. And also the fact is that how can we ask an artist for consent for something, like you rightly said earlier, has already been ripped? So I think for us, it's like that's another thing that's kind of exciting about it, is that also this space keeps changing. So we know that all the principles are at our core. We're listening to the business intelligence. We're listening to members. We're listening to the wider industry, and also just trying to help people navigate around that, while also just within our community sharing that information. So that we can, so that people can move in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like we've covered a lot.
I feel like I overtalked in this, so I appreciate that.
I was like very much listening a lot on this one, because I was like so interested, and it's a topic that I've been hearing so much about and thinking. I don't tend to get that worried, I guess, by most things. I know that the music industry is in this constant state of evolution.
Absolutely.
It always has been. Like the role that vinyl is playing today, I think demonstrates, it should give people a lot of reassurance that there isn't too much to fear, that creativity and music output and what people gravitate to is always going to be in this kind of journey. But so it's just interesting for me to learn and listen and kind of understand the conversations that are going on, and hopefully I think help people feel sort of not too scared and a bit more maybe optimistic about actually what this can unlock, and as you said, embracing the role that electronic music plays in developing technology and being a part of the evolution of technology.
Exactly. And also, you said something there, vinyl, that's super close to my heart. And I know you and I talked about Yoyaku in Paris, who are a member, and they, we're a unique culture. Like, we care about music gen AI and we care about vinyl. And what does that say? It's like, there's cultural nuances to what we do. There's, all sorts of perspectives, but there's this collaborative element within the way we do music creation. And music will always continue. I think that what happened was, my takeaway from it is that, I've been doing this for 25 plus years. I've seen crazy shit, and music keeps going. And so, what we're seeing now is, obviously, quite a surprise for some, but at the same time, culture will continue. And I also feel that music democratization has been a wonderful thing. But also, what does this mean? This means that you are going to have to be really fucking good to get people's attention musically. And that's a win for everyone, I think. So that would be, I would not be sitting back right now and thinking about how can I automate my artistic career. I would be thinking like, how do I be really good? I would also be looking at other technologies like immersive audio, also like revert records, like what they want to do around training around their own stuff. And, I would also be like takeaways, read the TNCs, like any platform you're using, read them, because you could actually make something with it and realize you don't own it.
Which is a strange feeling. Yeah.
Totally. And also at the end of the day, educate yourself about where the money comes from and what you need to do to protect your IP. And that's why organizations like WIPO for Creators and CLIP are wonderful resources. So, and join a gang. We can't do this individually. We have to do it together.
Yeah. And in that sense, those principles are the same as ever. And they're sort of like the core principles of any good career, which is like, be excellent at what you do, find people that are to do it with you, and kind of be open to the best ways of doing something.
That's it. And don't rip people off. It's just simple common sense. But what's unique in terms of releasing, and this is kind of what I realized at this point, trade associations release white papers all the time. And our core principles are an ongoing initiative, just much like our get played, get paid around, educating people that it's like, hey, if your music gets played at a festival and you're anti-CMO, do you realize you probably just lost like a couple €100 if it was a big festival? And, but what's interesting with the AI principles is we know that, there are government lobbying pieces, there's a global piece, there is also this realities that we're uncovering as we move deeper into it.
Yeah.
So, I think that the fifth principle that is not written there is that we're dealing with tech, we're learning all the time, it's moving fast, and we're sharing that information so we can all be educated and arm ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with me today.
Lex, thanks. Have a lovely day, okay?
You too. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks again.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye.
Bye.